Hi, everybody. It's me, Mark Fisher, our Scientology Stories Peeling the Onion, and I'm here with my co-host.
Me, Janis, Gillham, Grady. G'day, everyone.
How
Hi,
you
Mark.
doing, Janis?
I'm good. It's too cold for me. It was 43 degrees this morning when I went out riding, and I had 4 layers of sweaters on and a hat and gloves, but it was nice to have no wind because yesterday was so windy. So today it's actually pretty outside.
You get a late start. When I get up at about 4:30 in the morning, it was 33 degrees here where I live. And, we're in the same city, of course, but then, so it was really cold. But again, no wind. Yesterday was miserable, even at 40
Yeah.
degrees, because the wind chill factor was ridiculous. And I'm wearing a sweatshirt today because I'm still chilly. And Misha's sitting right here. So anyway, I got to keep it
Well,
warm.
the water troughs are all covered with ice this morning. The ranch hand had to break all the ice so the horses could get the water.
And I realize that we're complaining. Meanwhile, the rest of the country is in a deep freeze, probably around 0 degrees with snow and everything. But, we're wimps here in Las Vegas. We're not used to this.
We are. We're spoiled. Yeah.
Anyway, why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest? We've got a new guest, a new person here.
Yes, this guest today is someone I have known since the early 70s. She's been a good friend. I recently went and stayed with her up in San Jose. She used to work with me. She's worked with my brother. She knows my whole family. And just a wonderful lady all around, and that's Sandy Holeman.
Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Sandy.
There you go. Hi. How are you doing out there in California, right? Not quite so cold?
Yeah, it's not as cold as in Las Vegas because we're on the coast, which keeps it more temperate. But it's about 43 or something here. So it's still cold, but it's not that cold. Plus, we had a little rain.
In the Bay Area? Are you in the Bay Area or?
Yeah, I'm in Oakland.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's in Tesla country.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, a funny story, when I went up there last year and Sandy says, we'll pick you up at the airport. And she says, look for the white Tesla. And I'm on the phone with her and I see this white Tesla drive off. I'm like, oh no. And then I look and it's all these white Teslas. It's like everyone had a white Tesla.
That's wild. That's funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead, Janis. Where do you want to get started with Sandy?
Yeah. So, Sandy, let's start at the beginning of how you got into Scientology. And we'll also talk about your school and some of the people you went to school with or knew from school who also got into Scientology. Because there seems to have been a whole little group there in San Jose. And I noticed that when I was staying with you last year.
And then also, I just want to mention, just for our viewers, because they don't know Sandy's story, she was on the Flagship Apollo with L. Ron Hubbard in the 70s, and then in Florida and all that. So we're going to cover her whole time period, and she was involved with lots of different things. We've got photographs and everything, so stay tuned. Go ahead, Sandy.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So let's see. I guess you could say it started when my brother was about 15. He had always been a searcher. He had tried macrobiotic diet and Alan Watts and Hinduism, Buddhism. He was looking for the answers and finally found Scientology and thought that this was it.
And you're talking about Dan, your brother Dan, right?
Yeah, my brother Dan Holeman. A lot of people know him.
Yeah.
Now he's younger than you, right?
Yeah, but only 18 months younger. Not a lot. Yeah. In high school, my brother was the introvert. I was the extrovert. He kept trying to get me to go to an introductory lecture. And I was like, no, I'm good. My life is fine. I don't need, anything extra. But eventually, he brought this guy home from the local mission, which was the place where all these people you're talking about got into Scientology was the Santa Clara mission. Santa Clara is right next to San Jose, and that Santa Clara mission, that's where Spanky Taylor got in. That's where the two brothers from People got in. There
Robbie and
were
Jeff Levin.
Right. There were a lot of people in our high school who got in, but only briefly. My husband's brother was in briefly. My cousin, Marianne, I won't say her last name. My cousin Marianne was in briefly. I mean, there were a lot of people who it was a kind of an in thing to do, you know.
How old were you then?
Well, when my brother finally convinced me to go to a lecture, I was 19.
Okay.
I had been out of high school for a year. I was not doing well. My first long-term relationship had just broken up. I was not enjoying college. I was just at a local community college. I came from a quote unquote broken home. So, you know, I was in a crossroads, which is pretty.
And what year was it? Around what year or time period?
1970.
Okay.
So August of 1970, he brought this very good-looking guy home from the mission, whose name was Terry Hayes, and he had curly brown hair and twinkly blue eyes, and I fell in love right away, and I decided. And he told me about the ARC triangle, and I went, wow, that's really cool. That makes perfect sense. So I was a Scientologist. And my father took immediate dislike to this guy, not because he was a Scientologist, just because he was kind of a hippie and he was kind of not real respectful to my father, and didn't call him Mr. Holeman, called him by his first name. And my dad said, well, you can't go out with him. And I was like, excuse me? I can't go out with him? No, I don't want you to see him anymore. And and I was 19. It was like, come on. So I said, fine, then I'll move out. So I moved out of the house and moved in with Terry Hayes. And we set up house together. And I had one failed auditing session at the mission. I was in a Dianetic session and started to faint. I had a student auditor. And she took me out of session and brought me outside because I was like, and that was the only auditing I had had. And I had done the communications course. And that was all I had when the very famous recruitment tour on the boulevard with Bob Young as the captain came into the San Francisco harbor, and they docked, and my brother said, hey, the Sea Org ship is in, let's go check it out. So we did. We went to San Francisco from San Jose, which is about an hour, and we went on board the ship. And Bob Young talked to us and said, well, he was very low key. Oh, it's really cool. We have a really good time. And, we sail on the ship and it's all fun.
This was the famous Ride Captain Ride ship tour up to San Francisco we heard about. Is that right?
No. This one started up north and was coming down the coast.
Oh, okay. But I mean, I was just saying we've covered in earlier videos. I forget who we were talking to about how, that song, Ride Captain Ride, upon your mystery ship was based on Bob Young and the Boulevard.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well,
but
Bob Young says it.
Bob Young says it. Well, of course, Bob Young would have said it. Bob Young, yeah. Well, he would say a lot of things. Anyway, he was, didn't even mention the Sea Org contract, just like, well, if you want to give it a try, we're sailing from here down to LA. You could come on board and we could sail down to LA and you could decide if you like it or not and, join up or not. So I said, cool. So I packed about 6 weeks worth of clothes. There we go. That's on the boulevard when I was 19. And I don't remember this guy's name. I think he was a snipe. I think he was in the engine room, or he was a decky, one of the two.
Yeah, he looks like a decky.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. So So I sailed down to LA on the boulevard, and it was very exciting. It was beautiful weather. We sailed under the Golden Gate Bridge, and Neil Sarfati was the port captain on the ship, and he performed a wedding as we were sailing under the bridge. It was pretty cool. And
did your brother join? Did your brother join too with you?
Okay. No, because he had to handle the draft first.
Oh yeah, 1970, sure.
And actually, my dad had to sign a permission slip for me to join because I was underage. Legal age at that point was 21. Mm-hmm. Many years later, when my dad came to say he regretted having signed permission for me to join. But at the time, Scientology seemed to have done a lot for my brother. He came out of being an introvert and sort of blossomed. Could have also been just his age, We turned 18 and he was doing better in life. But so my dad didn't think there was anything. Plus, there was no literature about Scientology in 1970 about good, bad, or indifferent. I think Paulette Cooper's book came out in 71 or 72. And that was really the first bad PR for Scientology, to my knowledge. So we got down to LA, and Annie Taskett came on board, and she gave us all tests, OCA test, personality test, IQ test, aptitude test, and decided that I should go to Flag. Again, I'd had a comm course and one failed session.
Just so people know, Flag is where the ship the Commodore is on, and at that time it would have been the Apollo.
Correct.
So when we say Flag, we're talking about the Apollo.
Right. So there it is. So so I didn't know if I should go or not because that hadn't been the plan, and I had this boyfriend back in San Jose. And anyway, long story short, after a few days of hanging around Celebrity Center, I decided. And the recruiter at Celebrity Center said to me, if you join the Sea Org, you can get all of your services for free, and then when you want, you can just take a leave of absence for a lifetime. And I thought, well, that sounds great.
That'll do it.
I mean, I won't have to pay for all these courses and all this auditing, and it's all free, and then I can leave.
And what's a lifetime out of 1 billion years?
Exactly. Yeah. And that was Tracy. Do you remember Tracy's last name?
Tracy Holmes?
Nanny. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
She's the recruiter who told me that. So so I thought, okay, well, fine, I'll give it a shot. But I never left the state of California. And the next thing I knew, I was on an airplane. We flew to New York, and then from New York, we flew to Madrid, Spain. And I was with 9 guys, and I was the only girl. And little John Nelson, you remember there were?
Oh, I remember him.
There were actually 3 John Nelsons, I think, but little John Nelson.
I remember.
Was one of them. Mike Rapkin was one. Tony Strawn was one.
Okay.
And I don't remember who else because they didn't last that long, most of them. But we got to to Madrid, and we had been briefed heavily about the shore story, Operation Transport Corporation. And we were told, no matter what anybody says, do not say Scientology. You are not in Scientology. Yes, Mark.
Oh, I was just going to ask, when you got on the plane in Los Angeles, was it Los Angeles or whatever?
Yeah.
Did they tell you where you were going or anything?
No. We had no idea.
Go, we're getting on a plane and I'm going with all these guys and I don't know where we're going.
That's right. Location is confidential. You can't know. And I think it was in New York that we got briefed on Operation Transport Corporation,
Yes.
When we arrived in Madrid, it was Mike Douglas was there, and I
Ellen
can
or
remember,
David
huh?
or David. Ellen was with him for a while, and David Rappaport.
David Rappaport. That was the
Yeah.
other one. Yeah. And they said, no, we know, we're Scientology, we're Sea Org members. And I was like, no, 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 Operation Transport Corporation. I don't know what you mean. And anyway, they eventually convinced us that they were Sea Org members and they were Scientologists. And they put us, that was when we first found out where we were actually going, was once we got to Madrid. So they put us on a train to go down to Gibraltar, where we then took a ferry to Tangiers. And Tangiers was where the ship was where the Apollo was.
Must have been
So
really exciting. I mean, I don't know, you were 19, 20 years old. I mean, for me,
19.
I would have been like, this is pretty cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was cool. I arrived on the ship in February of 71, about 3 weeks before my 20th birthday. And interestingly, on the ferry between Gibraltar and Tangiers, this man came up to me, youngish man, and I told him, that I was going to be on this ship Apollo, Operation Transport Corporation, and he said, "Oh, the Scientology ship." And later, when I debriefed on that, when you get to the ship, you have to debrief right after you hand over your passport, so you can't leave. And they said that he was probably CIA, that guy. Anyway, I don't know who he was, but he knew all about.
Possibly. Yeah.
So, so I got there and I was put in the galley.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
What was your first impression when you saw the ship? Do you remember?
Yes, it was very impressive. It was gleaming white. Tangiers is a beautiful city, and there it was in the harbor, and it was pretty spectacular. I mean, it was big, and it was white, and it was awesome. Yeah.
Well, we would have just painted her white around that time.
Yeah.
She'd been black before that. Yeah.
Right. I've seen the pictures, but I only saw her white, shining, bright white. Wonderful.
Do you remember coming on board the first time and, who you met and how all that?
I don't remember walking up the gangplank, but I remember being assigned to the galley under Cher Jessup. Mm-hmm. She was the chief steward at the time. I was assigned to be the steward for the officers' dining room. And in between serving meals and cleaning up after the meals, I had to do all the dishes. And I remember telling Cher, you need to get somebody else to do the dishes because I'm busy with this serving and I can't do everything. And so she did. She actually found somebody else to wash the dishes.
Well,
except for
dishwashing was my first job. When Terry and I arrived at 11 and 13 years old, we were the dishwashers, and I had to stand on those milk crates in order to reach the sink.
And what did they call those big bins? Hoodoos or hoodos? Or do you remember hoodos?
The big bins.
Anyway, big bins that they put all the dishes in. And anyway.
Oh yeah.
So
do you remember what your berthing was? Like, were you in a dormitory?
Yes, I got to go into the steward's dormitory, which was only six. Yes, steward's dorm was only 6 berths, so it was actually really decent compared to the women's dorm. Yeah. So one of my dorm mates was Sue Meister. That's in a story that we can get into if you like.
Yes, we'll do that story.
Yeah. And so anyway, I, was very popular with the officers. I was pretty cute. I was 19, 20 years old, and I was perky. And I actually, I've always enjoyed, that was my first experience with hospitality. and I really liked it, but it was really hard. It was, 3 meals a day, and I don't remember if I had to do mid-rats too, but I wouldn't be surprised. And
You remember? Oh, go ahead, Janis.
Mid-rats, so everybody knows, is for the night watch. That's their dinner time, and it's called mid-rats because it's at midnight. And
midnight
it was
ration.
like midnight rations, and it was a full meal that the galley had to cook for the people on night watch.
Yeah, it was about 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And then, Sandy, I was going to ask, do you remember who some of the officers were that you were serving back then that, that we would know?
Yes, Bill Robertson was the captain.
Mm-hmm.
And I distinctly remember serving Ken Urquhart, who was LRH's personal communicator, because he always had a sour disposition first thing in the morning. And I would bring him out. As soon as I saw him enter the dining room, I'd run in and fix his pot of tea and get his eggs going. And then I brought them out. And by the time he sat down, his tea was there, his eggs were there, just the way he liked them. And he loved me. He would smile at me, So he and I got along really, really well. Always, actually, always.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, Peter Warren was the port captain,
right?
And I don't remember who else in the beginning. I mean, I remember the messengers' tables were in the officers' dining room, and the messengers liked me as well because I was not that much older than them. And at that time, they were all girls. There were no male messengers.
Do you remember meeting Janis?
Oh, sure. Well, I don't remember first meeting her, but I made friends. I hung out with the messengers a lot. We did stuff together. We went to other ships that had Navy officers on, and went dancing with the Royal Navy from the UK and with the US
and the Dutch Navy and the US Navy and the French Navy.
Yeah, we had a good time. So, and in actual fact, shortly after I got to the ship, maybe a month after, I got sick, and I went back into sick bay, which was in the aft part of the ship. There were little cabins back there, and if you went back there, you were in isolation. And my buddy on the ship was Max McCall, Frank McCall's brother.
Yeah.
And he was a very sweet man, very, very kind. And he would come and visit me in isolation. And I started having nightmares. I dreamed that it was all a communist conspiracy. The Sea Org was a communist conspiracy because, back then, this was during the Vietnam War, and communism was the big fear in the United States. And I dreamed that LRH was a really bad guy, and this was a bad deal. And I told Max McCall, I want to leave. And he tried to talk me out of it, and I kept saying, no, I think I just need to go. So he had me write up a petition that went up to the AIDS deck. And I think Joan Robertson was CS1 at the time. And I later found out, going through my personnel file, that she wrote, get this girl off the ship now, because she's going to blow, get her out of here. I don't know why. Oh, I do know why. The reason that I wasn't offloaded right away was because Otto Roos took an interest in me. And he seemed like a nice enough guy, and he had a motorcycle. And he invited me to go riding with him on his motorcycle. And I thought, well, that's cool. So we went for a ride. And then he invited me to, there's Otto. That's actually a wonderful photo of him.
It is. It is a good picture.
Yeah. He was Dutch. He was a class 12 auditor. So he had big, he was very impressive, and very, he was high up in the chain of command. He had lots of privileges. He had his own cabin, which was kind of unusual for someone who wasn't married. So the first time he took me out to dinner on his motorcycle, he said, "Why don't you come back to my cabin with me?" Which I said, okay, and I did. And then he started unbuttoning my blouse, and I was kind of surprised. I was like, oh, okay. I was 20, he was 35. He seemed kind of old.
He was old.
And, we had sex, and it was not romantic. It was not special. It was just, and it was the first time I was surprised. I didn't understand what the rules were. I didn't understand, what was going on. It was not cool, but I liked the motorcycle rides. I liked being taken out to dinner. I really liked his friends, Tommy and Lisa Klingval.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently, of all the girls Otto had, which he had quite a harem, the only one that Tommy and Lisa liked was me. So I got to go more often than anybody else. But always the payback was sex afterwards in his cabin. So that's why I didn't get offloaded. He pulled some strings and kept me on. And after a while, I kind of got into the routine. I stopped being so homesick. And yes, Mark.
No, I was going to ask Janis, can you explain what Otto Roos, for our viewers, what his position was? Because wasn't he like the senior CS or like one of the top technical people, or what was his position?
Yeah, Otto was trained to class 12 by LRH, and he used to also audit LRH. And later on in years, when LRH was having some trouble with his solo auditing, Otto, with all the other class 12s, offered to do folder error summaries and go through and see what errors need to be cleaned up and do up a list of items to check on Hubbard to see what reads and what doesn't and what indicates. And this was what actually got Otto in trouble, because in going through those PC folders of Hubbard's, in the old days, Hubbard was writing RS through his folders for Rock Slam. And so Otto brought up something about there being some Rock Slams in Hubbard's folder, and Hubbard hit the roof about Otto accusing him of being a rock slammer and that he doesn't have these evil purposes, and that rock slam meant something else in those days when he wrote RS in the PC folders. So I actually ended up as the messenger running the messages back and forth to Otto. And Hubbard was just ballistic. I mean, I'd never seen him so bad. And Mary Sue came in and was trying to calm him down. And Otto didn't like the message runs back and forth. What, Sandy?
Was that when Otto went up to the research room and Hubbard took a swing at him?
Yes, exactly. So yeah, instead of me having to run the messages, Otto was like, I'll come up and tell him. So then Otto comes up behind me and just walks into the research room. The research room was Hubbard's office, and just started trying to explain something to Hubbard, and Hubbard just took a swing at him. And Otto ducked. Yeah, he missed. Yeah. Otto ducked.
Yeah.
But the yelling continued. Mary Sue's trying to calm Hubbard down. I'm now just watching this whole thing. I'm no longer needed to run back and forth. They're all right there. Anyway, the end result was Otto was being accused of trying to call Hubbard an RSer and that he wasn't being helpful. And Otto ended up actually being offloaded after that.
Can you explain, Janis, Rock Slam and RSer, because a lot of our viewers probably don't know what that would have meant to Hubbard.
Yeah.
Why was he so upset over that?
On the e-meter, there is different reads that the e-meter gives based off different conscious this of the PC, the Preclair, and you're holding the cans. And if you're in a good mood or everything's released, you've got what's called a floating needle, and it just floats back and forth. If there's something you have attention on, the needle's going to fall, and it'll keep falling until you go, oh, blah, blah, blah. But then a rock slam means that there's evil purposes behind, and that the needle is going to react like this. And so to say someone's a rock slammer is basically saying they have unhandled evil purposes.
Right.
Right.
So that's why he was upset. And then what's the moral of the story? What else? I mean, didn't Mary Sue have something to do with it too?
Well, Mary Sue was there, and she kept claiming, I've audited Ron all these years, and he never rock slammed. But there were indicators of her having written RS, and that's where they're now trying to say that was a different needle phenomena.
Right.
Well, I have another side of that story.
Okay.
That is that Otto came to me in the tween decks one evening. He and Tommy and Lisa had been FESing the folders, LRH's folders, PC folders. And
that's folder error summary.
Right. And he came to me and he said, we, meaning the three of them, have figured out the real problem, and that is that LRH is insane. And it was like someone had thrown a bucket of cold water on me. Because by that time, I'd been there for over a year. And I was pretty indoctrinated, and certainly along with the program. And I didn't know what to do with that information at all. And I just, just before Otto was offloaded, Tommy and Lisa Klingval blew, and they left the ship. And then Otto was offloaded or blew, I don't know, he left anyway, he was gone. And at that time, I was working in Mimeo files, or not in the files, but in Mimeo as the reprint operator. So, you have to remember there was no computers, there was no, all of LRH's policy letters and HCOBs, the technical bulletins, were all printed on a Mimeo machine. And then we had these huge, this is after Jacob's Mountain, which is a whole other story. Before I got there, they had these, it was down in the bottom of the ship, one of the holds, there was these huge array of filing cabinets with all these policy letters and bulletins, and people would come and take them to read and learn and, maybe get hatted, and then they'd run out. And so I had to reprint whatever issues they were running out of. So that was my job in Mimeo.
Right. Well, let me just state that when LRH wrote a policy letter or a bulletin, he hand wrote it, and it went down to Mimeo, where they typed it up on a stencil. The stencil was then run on the printing machine with, the ink seeping through and printed it out on paper. The stencil was then kept in the folder in the file cabinets with a bunch of extra copies so people could pull out their copies. And so Sandy would then, if she needed to reprint them, she'd go to that file and pull out the stencil and just rerun it. If the stencil was missing, it had to be retyped.
Right.
Because it was like with carbon paper, you did everything with carbon paper, so you didn't have to rewrite it because we didn't have computers or anything like that.
Right.
Thank goodness for computers.
But that's how the Mimeo system worked.
Right.
You remember Ron Stone? He was the Mimeo operator who ran he ran the original copies of the policies and bulletins. So anyway, I'm down in Mimeo because I'd been busted from a post that, we kind of skipped ahead here, but not busted from being a steward. I was a great steward and I never got in trouble for that. But I was down in Mimeo and I saw Tony Dunleavy, who by that time was CS1. And he was walking in the files and he was looking over at me and kind of keeping an eye on me. And I didn't understand what was going on. And then I got a postcard from Otto. And he signed it the Rose, because Roos means rose in Dutch. And he was asking me to come and join him and Tommy and Lisa, which I seriously considered doing. In fact, I probably would have done it, but my brother talked me out of it, saying, "Oh, you know, they're class 12 auditors. They can audit each other. They're already way up bridge, and you know, da 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 da. And so, you know, but you need to stay here because you have to get up the bridge yourself." And you know, so anyway, he talked me out of going. But
Sandy,
yes.
Did you know Lisa was my favorite auditor I've ever had?
She was awesome.
I just loved her.
Both of them were really, yeah, they were great people. So before that, from the galley, I got recruited to you know, LRH would do this thing where he would have what I would call a hobby horse. He would take different things. He would say, all of a sudden he'd be like, "Oh, everybody needs to do the primary rundown. Everybody has to do that. Oh, everybody needs to be trained on blah, 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 blah. Oh," and you know, and he would have these things where he would jump from thing to thing to thing. I'm sure you experienced that as well, Mark. But at the time it was everybody needs to be hatted. Everybody has to have a hat pack and be checked out on their hat pack with all the policies having to do with their job, and everybody on the ship. So hang on, let me just finish this and then I'll come back. So David Ziff was appointed as the HATS officer in HCO, Hubbard Communications Office, Division 1. And underneath him, there was the HATS compilation officer, that'd be me. And there was the HAT checker, that was Rob Williamson. And there may have even been more. I don't know. But we had a big beefed up hatting department because this was his thing he was working on right now. Yes, Mark.
Well, I was just going to explain what a hat is. Our viewers don't know what that is. A hat is like your job. It's training for your job. So like, you know, a policeman would have a policeman hat, or fireman or fire hat. So hatting or getting hatted would be getting trained for your job. That's what that means. So whatever your job was, steward, messenger, auditor, whatever it was, they would put together a pack of the policies from Hubbard that related to your job. And that was what was called getting fully hatted. You would study that material, and when you were done with that, then you were considered to be trained for your job. That's all. I just wanted to explain that.
Yep. So I kind of figured out that, you know, we didn't have a Mimeo reprint operator at that time because that was before I went down there. But we had a photocopy machine. So if we ran out of a particular policy letter, then I could photocopy them on the copy machine, which there was one copy machine on the ship. So everybody was using it all the time. So I figured out, wait a minute, if I go onto the nighttime schedule, I can have full access to the copy machine.
Yeah.
So it was very clever, actually, because I got to work from like, I don't know, let's say 10 p.m. till 6 a.m., whatever. And then I would go to bed, or I would stay up and play. And at any rate, I don't remember my exact schedule, but what I do remember was I had a lot of free time, and that's when I got to hang out with the messengers. And they had a lot of free time too, so it all worked out. And so I was very upstat because I was making hat packs for everybody. And I got recruited by Bob Harvey to the post of Sea Org Personnel Control Officer. after, I actually when I was still in the hat department, I was getting sick like once a month ever since I got on the ship. Now, I'd never been out of California, and there's all these foreign, bacteria that I'm running into and all kinds of crap in Morocco. And so I was getting sick frequently. And David Ziff said to me, "What's your case level?" And I said, "None." And he goes, "No, I mean, how much auditing have you had?" And I said, "None." He goes, "What?" So he got me into session. And my first auditor, actually, I had a couple of student auditors who were terrible. And I said to the examiner, "Can I have a real auditor, please?" And so my first real auditor was Leon Steinberg, who ran ARC Straight Wire on me. And I had huge wins on ARC Straight Wire. And that was when I really became convinced that this was a good deal.
Yeah, no, what you're saying is exactly what happened to me. I mean, my first, week in Scientology as a 14-year-old, I did my life repair and ARC straight wire, and I was hooked. That was it. I mean, I had so much huge wins, great gains, and I was like, this stuff can change the world,
Right. Yeah, ARC straight wire is, I still believe to this day, quite magical. It can really make you. I mean, I had huge wins, and so then from there I went to Sea Org Personnel Control Officer, where I was in charge of all the personnel in the whole Sea Org in the world.
That's right.
And I was 20 years old.
Sandy, can I go back? We jumped ahead, but can I go back and ask you a couple of questions? Okay.
Yeah.
Number one is, do you remember the first time you either saw or talked to L. Ron Hubbard on the Apollo when you were 20 years old?
Yeah, I do. I was walking on the prom deck, the promenade deck, and at the other end, I saw LRH with two messengers, and they were walking towards me. And I don't remember which two messengers they were. It might have been Janis, might have been Doreen. I don't know who it was, but whoever it was whispered in his ear and said, "That's Sandy Holeman," because he didn't know who I was. And so I got up close, and I had already done my Sea Org basic new recruit hat. And so I knew that what I'm supposed to say when I see him is "Good afternoon, sir," or "Good morning, sir," or "Good evening, sir." But I was so starstruck that all I could say was "Hello, sir," because I didn't know what time of day it was. I was just like, oh, it was, my heart was pounding. I was thrilled. It was really great. And really, that's the only, thing I said to him. And probably the only thing I ever said to him. I never had a conversation with him.
Wow.
My husband later on did. He had a lot of conversations with him, but I never did. I worked for Mary Sue later on and had conversations with her. But the other encounter I remembered strongly with LRH was coming into the foyer that was on the A deck, I'm thinking, Janis, where it was right outside of his dining room.
Yeah, A deck.
And he was standing there, and all the aides were around him, and he was telling a story, and he was a great storyteller. And they were all smiling and clapping and laughing, and and I just came in and went, and I just stood back and just kind of observed the scene and was, again, very impressed that I couldn't hear him, but apparently what he was saying was very fun because everybody was enjoying it.
Now, weren't you in Sandy, weren't you in any of the sea watches when he would go up there while we were at sea?
Yes, but I was a radio operator.
Oh,
So
so
I
you're in
was
the
in the,
radio room. Okay.
yeah. So I never saw him up on the, yeah.
Okay, the other
Okay.
question I wanted to ask is, when did your brother, because your brother eventually came to the Apollo too, when was that? Because I want to show those photographs.
That's a good story. So he had finally been allowed to join the Sea Org, and he was in LA at USLO. At that time, it was not FOLO US, it was USLO, United
Liaison
States
office.
Liaison Office in Los Angeles. And he was not happy, and he wanted to come and join me on the Apollo. So when I became Sea Org Personnel Control Officer, one of the first things I did was I transferred him to Flag.
There you go.
And I got it.
Had you been in writing him letters or communicating?
Oh,
and
yeah,
telling
we've
him?
been writing letters
Yeah.
back and forth. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We were very tight back then, very tight. And so I got, yeah.
That's Sandy there on the right, and her brother Dan Holeman right there.
Yeah, yeah. So he came to the ship. I got in a lot of trouble for doing that because I didn't replace him. I just transferred him to Flag.
That's okay. That happened all the time.
so that, you know, it was like, you shouldn't have done that. Okay, I said, okay. Inside I'm thinking, but I did, and I got away with it, and now I'm with my brother. Yay! And Dan was very popular on the ship. He's an artist. If anybody wants to look at his website, check out Daniel Holeman on Google, and you'll see
He's an amazing artist.
He's an amazing artist. And back then he could do calligraphy, and he had already been an artist. And so he did all the certs and awards. He would print out hand letter all the certificates for anybody when they completed a level of training or a level of in training or auditing. He would, yeah,
he had to catch up the whole backlog of all
you
those.
Remember what happened? You know what happened there? There was this huge backlog, and nobody could figure out why it wasn't getting caught up. So LRH sent a messenger down to my brother, and he explained to him, well, I'm supposed to do 1,000 certificates here. Anyway, long story short, messenger run back and forth, back and forth. The outcome was LRH said, no. Just do the most recent thing they finished, and that's the certificate they get. Don't do all the beginning all the way up. Just do the most recent thing. So my brother was able to then catch up all the backlog, and he did a great job. Certificates are all beautiful, and in fact, in the movie Going Clear, there's a Sea Org contract, I think, that Hannah shows, and it's my brother's calligraphy on it. Yeah. Anyway, so he stayed on the ship until well, let's see, what year was it? Do you remember, Janis, what year it was when Mary Sue decided, I can't run the whole Guardian Office network and be the assistant guardian for the ship. So I need to bring someone to Flag to be the assistant guardian Flag. And that was Ann Burgess. And then she also came along with two other people that were in B1.
Brian Rubinek.
Brian Rubinek and
Bill Fosdick.
Bill Fosdick, yes. So she then went through everybody's PC folder. They went through everybody's PC folders, and they decided that since my brother had taken LSD, which I still haven't, should try that sometime, but whatever. My brother had done quite a bit of LSD back in the day, and so they kicked him off. They sent him back to LA. He didn't get kicked out of the Sea Org, but he got kicked off of Flag.
Can we show some of these other photographs and tell the story about these photographs, okay?
Sure. Yeah, so my brother and I were getting letters from my parents that, what's going on? Where are you? Of course, we couldn't tell them where we were. And so So we had the ship's photographer, who was Sylvia the Calhoun, take pictures of us to send back to our parents. Now, these pictures were so posed that
They look like a recruitment brochure photograph. That's
It does.
It only served to further distress my parents. Like, what's going on?
You look brainwashed.
I mean, no, but you guys look like you're models. I mean, the photographs are such great quality with the clothes and everything.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah,
you know, these look like they're out of a magazine.
yeah.
Brainwashed photographs.
There's the brainwash right there.
That's my vamp picture.
What do you have next to your ear? Is that like a?
Oh, that's from the radio operator.
Oh,
you know.
okay.
Yeah, that's
Only I
one of
don't
those
know if
old walkie-talkie type phones.
So this is not from then. This is
Right.
This
This
is
is later. I'll
later.
take that down.
You know, I can't. Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Right.
that's later. So yeah.
So your parents, they got those photos and they freaked out even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You want all my postings throughout the career?
No,
on the
no, it's
ship,
okay.
or
I
no?
mean, we're just like, so Dan, you said eventually they had to send him back to Los Angeles and stuff, right? But
Right.
you were in charge of the procurement, right? And all that. No,
No.
you were in charge of the personnel, right?
Personnel control officer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Posting.
Dan later returned when we moved to the Flag Land Base because he was there.
Yeah, he was there when I met him in Clearwater.
He married that little woman
Diva.
Yeah.
Who?
He met her when
What
we
was
were
her name?
Diva
Diva.
Holeman.
God, I remember that.
DEVA.
Oh, I remember her because I worked with Dan when I joined the Sea Org in external communications in the telex room, and I remember Diva Holeman. Yeah, I remember her now.
She was really, really pretty. I mean, astonishingly beautiful.
Yeah.
And she's dead now.
Oh.
Probably died of lung cancer. She was a smoker, like all of us. But he met her when he was on leave. I think he came on leave with Roger and me. So after Otto was gone, Roger Barnes came on board. He had been the most successful registrar in Scientology ever. And he was in Los Angeles working at ASHO, and he blew because the pressure was just humongous. And so Robin Roos was CS2. She was over Division 2 for the world. So she sent out 2 missionaries to recover him and bring him to Flag to get him cleaned up. And yes.
Was Robin Roos related? Was she?
She had been married to
Otto Roos. Okay.
Yeah. They were married in Australia, I guess. But by the time I got to the ship, they were best friends, but they hadn't been married for years.
Yeah.
So he adored her, and actually punched out her boyfriend at one point when he didn't treat her right. Straussy.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, yeah. So where was I?
This was Roger Barnes.
There's Roger Barnes. That's when he was at St. Hill before he went to ASHO. That was when he first got into Scientology. There we are in Florida, top of the Fort Harrison Hotel. Yeah. So Roger and I took a leave and got married. He missed his wedding because he was on mission. And
that's a whole story.
That's a whole story.
We'll get to that at some point.
Yeah, my family had to take the wedding invitations and cross out the date and write in a new date on all the wedding invitations. Luckily, they hadn't been mailed yet. Anyway, so we got an extended annual leave. We got 5 weeks off when he finished that mission, and we got married at our family cabin in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And I think that's when Danny came home as well, and he met Diva, and then they long distance corresponded for like a year. And then she joined the Sea Org. And this was when he was in LA or in Clearwater, I guess. I don't
I
know.
think he was in Clearwater, and then she come
Yeah.
join the Sea Org in Clearwater.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I was around during that time because I remember
They were married for 5 years
Mhm.
before, and then he left after I did, a year after I did, and that split up their marriage.
Well, we're coming up here on an hour. We're going to have you do some more shows. Obviously, we got a lot more to talk about, but I just
We
wanted.
didn't get very far.
No, we didn't.
No,
But
we
we told some
didn't.
good stories, though. We got a
Yeah.
lot more photos
Yeah.
to show and a lot more stories to tell, I'm sure.
Well,
Okay.
you know, I should pull out some of these ship photos, and we can talk about different parts of the ship, and we can talk
Yeah.
about, 30-second showers, and washing clothes in buckets, and what life was like actually living on
Washing
the
your
ship.
clothes in seawater in buckets.
In salt
Right.
water, yeah.
Yeah, salt water.
Well, I just wanted to say to our viewers, we're going to have Sandy. We're going to do several videos with her, and we'll pick up where we left off. So this is really part 1, and we'll do a part 2, 3, 4, and part 50, whatever. Because Sandy's just wonderful to talk with and to be with. So we hope you're all enjoying this talk. And anyway, I'm going to go ahead and do the business real quick here, okay? So
Yep.
we want to thank you, Sandy, for being here, of course, and we'll do some
Pleasure.
more. But I just wanted to
Pleasure.
remind, if you guys are enjoying this show, please subscribe to our channel. Hit that subscribe button, and then rock slam, not the kind of rock slam that Janis was talking about, but that means just push the like button. It helps get the stories out to more people on YouTube. But please subscribe to our channel. If you've got any questions or anything for Sandy or for me or Janis, just go down in the comment section and you can ask whatever you like. And if you feel motivated to donate to our channel and want to help us out, you can buy us a coffee. Go down into the description of the video. There's a link there, and you can click on it, and we appreciate any support that we may get. Anyway, is there anything else, Janis and Sandy, or anything like that you want to say before we wrap up? I mean, any anecdote or anything, Janis?
I'm looking forward to the next one because Sandy's going to remind me of swimming off the side of the ship in Safi.
There you go. There's your mystery sandwich for you there, right there.
Yep.
And then also there's a connection between the brothers broken, and Sandy, and we're going to cover that as well. So you'll have to stick with that. That's Jeff and Robbie Levin of the band People. So anyway, we'll tell that story on the next episode. Okay.
Right.
Okay,
Yep.
good.
All right, then. If there's anything else, we're done here. So until next time, everybody, we want to appreciate you watching. Please subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.